It's 5:30 p.m. and I'm calling to order this regular meeting of the Fargo Board of Education. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and I will look for approval of the agenda. Robin?
I move approval of the agenda as presented with the human capital addendum.
Second.
We have a motion from Robin and a second from Namal. Any discussion? All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposition, same sign. Motion passes 9-0. Next, we move to recognition of the audience. At this time, the board will hear comments from the public. We ask that each speaker who has signed up to address the board state their name and home school district for the record. We ask that speakers refrain from using this forum to criticize or complain about a specific employee or student by name. Vulgar or profane language will not be tolerated. The board is interested in your comments and will listen carefully, but is not obligated to respond to or debate issues in this forum. This evening, 4 speakers have signed up to address the board. Each speaker will be allotted a maximum of 3 minutes. Upon conclusion of the allotted time, a chime will sound and the speaker is asked to conclude. If necessary, a final chime will sound 15 seconds later, signifying the end of the speaker's time at the podium. I will now call our first speaker to the podium, Corey Kempel. Is that Kimmel? Sorry, I was really off. Okay.
What am I supposed to do? All right. My name is Corey Kimley. I live at 8025 15th Street South in Fargo. We're part of the Bennett Elementary School District. I have 2 children, a 6-year-old boy who's in kindergarten this year at Bennett, and a 3-year-old daughter who will be going to kindergarten in 2 years. I'm here to obviously talk about the boundary changes and how they would negatively impact my family. First thing is the school that is proposed is Kennedy. It's the 4th furthest elementary school from my house as it sits right now. Bennett is actually extremely close. My kid can ride his bike to Bennett right now. Kennedy would more than double our commute when we are driving him. There's a bus that currently stops and picks up my son right in front of my house. From a logistic standpoint of looking at the new proposed boundaries, the bus is going to be right on the south side of 76. So you're not really adding any major logistics, making the 2 extra stops to go into Amber Plains. The other thing is the Amber Plains district doesn't hold that many kids, so I understand that you guys are dealing with the growing Fargo population and trying to find kids, trying to find room to put kids in schools. I get that, but taking away Amber Plains from the Bennett Elementary doesn't seem to solve that problem. There's not a lot of families. We have quite a few families that have older students, and then a lot of private school attendance in that neighborhood as well. So the impact is minimal. And again, the bus is, from a busing standpoint, logistically, doesn't make a ton of sense when you're already going to be having a bus on the south side there. My house has been there since 2001, and I've lived there since 2019. It seems a little unfair that we're redrawing these boundaries due to these new houses that are being built up that are even further away from Bennett than than our houses. And again, we've been there since 2019. My other concern is that Kennedy feeds into a different middle school and a high school, and so I'm going to uproot my kid who plays soccer and plays hockey with his current peers. I'm going to uproot him, take him to Kennedy, and then after he's out of Kennedy, he's going to have to pick up and go back to the district we're in now. And that just seems super unfair and unnecessary for my kid. And my time is running out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Jason Prochnow.
This is on. Jason Prochnow, 7609 15th Street South, same neighborhood as Corey. Basically backing everything that he basically just said. We're uprooting kids that are already established. I'm gonna have we got 4 kids, 3 of them, 3 different schools. So it's huge logisticals. You're gonna bring more traffic into these areas with more buses, more traffic. You're gonna lose money on gaining, on paying the Valley bus system come through. You're gonna have multiple buses going through these routes just to bus these kids for an hour and a half one way. These kids 5 years, 6 years old are gonna be on the buses for 3 hours a day. It's a little extravagant, I would believe. But the number in our, Corey was saying is 90% of those kids in the neighborhood are private schooled. You're not going to gain anything from getting our neighborhood kids. It's an established neighborhood. There's no going north or south. It's well established. It hasn't changed. We haven't been adding homes like that have been on the north side or north side of 76. So yeah, we're reaping the benefit, or we're getting it hammered to us because we're not developing. We're established. We've been there for years on end, and you're just gonna uproot these kids. Like you said, move them over to district. My kid's gonna go there for a year, lose all their friends, come back, and then lose a whole year with all their established kids. Moving these kids at these ages for a short period of time, it can have lasting effects on it. Some kids have trauma or whatever, or unease of anxiety of change or whatnot. So you're gonna move them, bam, relocate friends, get a new set of friends, and then back into the session with more, back into the, and then they lose all their friends in their little go-to with their groups. So so then what's going to happen also once development moves further south of 76 is that you're going to end up back into a rezoning anyways. So develop is, in the next 10, 15 years is going to probably jump over 76, and then move forward. So what are you guys going to do? Move that and reboundary again, and then bam, we're back right into Bennett. Is the way I see it planning out in the next few years. So I think I kind of hit on it. Corey hit a little bit more as well. So not too happy about it.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Spencer.
So I'm Spencer Deitz, 7708 Aquarius Drive, exact same neighborhood, here to speak on the same issue with the boundaries in the school districts. So my wife and I chose the public schools. We do believe strongly in public education. Like he had said, there's a little mix in the neighborhood of private public, but we're strong believers in it, so that's why we chose that. Under the current plan, obviously it would be rezoned to Kennedy. From our house, Bennett is 1.6 miles, and then Kennedy's 5 to 6 miles, so just a little over 5 miles. I actually drove the route this morning when my daughter had got on the bus. 5 minutes into the drive, on my left side, I passed Bennett. 14 minutes later, I got to Kennedy. So it was 19 minutes further, and that's a direct route. That wasn't picking up any other kids, straight direct. So if that 19 straight, so call it, an extra 15 minutes on top of that easy, to reroute and pick up all these other students, we're adding a significant amount of time on the bus for that. And then the middle school issue is also a really big concern. Most Kennedy students are going to feed into Carl Ben. And with this small group of kids that are in this neighborhood, they would be routed to Discovery. So now they're leaving all their childhood friends in school, going to Discovery, starting a brand new school with no familiar faces. And if you can put yourself in those kids' shoes, how would that make you guys feel if you're starting a new school at that age with no friends or no familiar faces? The other thing, we do understand that there's a possible petition that you can sign and get in and do that, which is great. It's an option, and we appreciate that if it does go through as an option just to discuss. However, we do have a son who's going to start kindergarten in the fall of 26. And I did listen to the February minutes or the meeting, and they said, or what I had heard on there is the grandfathering thing in, is really not an option. They don't want to do that. So if we did the petition for my daughter, she's going to Bennett. Now my son is stuck going to Kennedy. That's not impossible, right? So that's a huge issue or concern with the change as well. We're just asking to take another look. From the minutes in the meeting in February, I had heard that it was only 23 families, roughly 30 kids at most. It doesn't seem like a lot. Obviously, logistically, there could be other reasons for things. We do understand that. So we just ask that you take another look for it and see if we can keep our neighborhood and kids within the Bennett system. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And our last speaker is Carly Fromke.
Hi, good evening. My name is Carly Fromke. I have 3 students in Fargo Public School District 1. I reside in the same neighborhood as the previous speakers. And I oppose the current plan as brought forth by the Planning Committee and the proposed revision to have the areas south of Davies High School remain in the Bennett boundary. More specifically, to have the Kennedy boundary not extend to the east past Interstate 29. While the Planning Committee was faced with the challenge to distribute students for building utilization, what they noted as always unpopular, the current plan disproportionately targets these students in the low-density rural areas and doesn't solve the problems. These have been forecasted since the 2007 City of Fargo Growth Plan. For decades, the City of Fargo has prioritized zoning and approval of medium and high-density housing in and around schools like Davies and Bennett. This semi-annual redistribution or this housing projection noted on page 67 of that 2007 plan noted the need for an additional elementary school near Davies High School, which the public school system does currently still own. That semi-annual redistribution of students to solve this problem is really only short term. And the strategic plan aimed at building community when minimum students are being grandfathered into it, at minimum, students should be grandfathered to attend the same schools as their older siblings to maintain the sense of community that's stated as being important to this district's strategic initiative of positive school culture and engagement. When we're moving siblings out of the places that their older siblings have gone, that really erodes that sense of community and their ability for success. So for reference, our neighborhood is 1 house per acre. Farther south of us, 1 house per 5 acres, 10 acres. These rural areas aren't contributing to the problem like the higher density ones. Furthermore, we're currently able to bike to school like they mentioned. For reference, it would be a shorter distance to ask my student kindergartner to bike from West Acres Mall to the Fargo Dome and cross the interstate. That's a similar ask as biking from our house now across the interstate to get to Kennedy Elementary. The Planning Committee noted that to avoid crossing major intersections like 25th or University, yet they did not regard crossing a major intersection such as the interstate. Lastly, regarding upcoming developments, the 2024 Fargo Growth Plan notes a need for more high-density areas west of I-29 and east of Horace. Kennedy Elementary could be filled by these boundaries. So in conclusion, rural students south of Davies changing schools doesn't contribute to lower utilization at Bennett and harms the social emotional well-being by increasing commute times, reducing sleep opportunities, and eroding an important sense of community. Drawing the Kennedy boundary not east of I-29 and leaving students on the south of Bennett Davies side in Bennett Elementary is more consistent with the City of Fargo growth plan and doesn't unnecessarily harm these students without significantly dropping Bennett numbers. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Next on our agenda, number 5, you'll see that we are having a special recognition this evening, some appreciation for our outgoing superintendent, Dr. Gandhi. We are first going to start with a short video, and then I am going to share some words with him.
My name is Rupa Gandhi. I am the superintendent of Fargo Public Schools. I started in this role in 2018.
and I want to announce that Rupak Gandhi has accepted our offer to serve as the next superintendent for Fargo Public Schools.
When I think of Dr. Gandhi and his legacy, I can't help but think of all the innovation that he has brought to our district. When I think of Dr. Gandhi, I think of our Explorer Academy, I think of the Virtual Academy, I think of the Self-Directed Academy, and all these creative and innovative ways that he is providing education to try to meet the needs of each and every student in our district.
It is just very, very fun to be able to see students which maybe were not benefiting from our system and now thrive in some of the more specialized opportunities we're providing them. It just is very rewarding to see that kids can be successful if we change the environment versus maybe trying to change them to the environment that we're producing.
I think when you interact with Dr. Gandhi, it's very clear that student success is a passion of his, and I think that he goes to great lengths to find creative and innovative ways to make sure that we're meeting the students where they're at.
Most kids don't remember the superintendent, and I don't want them to. I want them to remember their principals. I want them to remember how they felt at schools. I want them to remember the experiences that they had, and that's because of our teachers, our support staff, and everyone else in the buildings. I just get to put the systems in place or work on the system to make sure that they get to thrive in the environment that's best for them. There's a strong desire of me that wanted to beat Dr. Bennett's record of being a superintendent here for 28 years, and I never expected that to change. That desire was still there because I didn't want any other job. I don't want any other job. At the end of the day, it came down to just not wanting to have any regrets. When my family and I kind of just discussed the opportunity of potentially being able to spend more time with our kids and see that it is actually feasible, we were kind of stuck in a point where we realized that if we don't do it, we're always going to be living with what if, and we just don't want to have that regret as parents. So we just felt like we owed it to our kids to give it a chance. Leaving Fargo is one of the hardest things I'm going to have to do. I like intellectual thought. I like people that push me. I like growing. I'll miss that. I'll miss the impact, the ability to lead a system and make decisions that have such a profound impact for good. And how do you not miss the mission of wanting to educate and empower every child to succeed? I don't know if there's a greater mission than that.
Okay, Dr. Gandhi. So I reached out to our current board members and your past board members, and I asked them to share some feedback, and I have put that together in a letter for you this
Have you
evening.
ever seen the magic glasses that can see clearly without glasses?
That's not me. Okay, so I put this together for you, and then we also have a small gift for you. So, dear Dr. Gandhi, as your tenure as superintendent comes to a close, we offer our deepest gratitude for your extraordinary leadership and unwavering dedication to Fargo Public Schools. Your legacy is one of vision and compassion. From the start, it was clear you were the right leader for this district. Your passion for Fargo, even during the hiring process, stood out, and you quickly made this community your home. You came prepared, listened intently, and made it your mission to ensure all students felt seen, respected, and valued. Initiatives like the Student Cabinet, the Explorer Academy, and your hands-on engagement across all levels of the district reflected your deep commitment to inclusivity and student voice. Your leadership during the COVID-19 pandemic was steady and courageous. You leaned on data, trusted experts, and made difficult decisions with one priority in mind: doing what was best for our students and staff. Even when choices were unpopular, your focus never wavered. Beyond crisis leadership, you pushed our district forward through innovative programs, expanded learning opportunities, and the creation of the Self-Directed Learning Academy. You empowered students to learn in ways that worked best for them. Your work for equity, safety, and student well-being, both physical and digital, strengthened the foundation of our schools. The comprehensive facility planning and transparent community engagement process you led will benefit Fargo for many years to come. Board members remember countless meaningful moments with you. Your willingness to stand up for all students, especially LGBTQ youth, and the personal touches like replying to student emails asking for snow days, show your compassion and authenticity. What stands out most is your moral clarity. You led with conviction, always centering what was right for students, even when it meant making tough calls. Your transformational leadership grounded in honesty and empathy has led a lasting mark on this district. You reminded us that education is not just about academics, it's about creating an environment where every child can thrive. As you step into your next opportunity, we wish you nothing but success and fulfillment. Thank you for setting a powerful example of principled leadership and for preparing Fargo Public Schools for a strong future. Your impact will be felt for generations. Thank you very much. Okay, and next we're going to move into our reports. We have Laura here from the FEA. Oh, yeah, FEA report, that's first. Go ahead, sorry.
I have just quick remarks, but first, I don't know if you guys saw the commotion in Island Park on your way here. Apparently somebody broke in and they were going down this slide and something about all the hot and cold going on. There was like a fissure or something and it damaged really badly the bottom of their foot. They didn't know if they should call an ambulance or a tow truck. I get a spit take. I gotta say, that's my most successful board address ever. Thank you, Katie. I'll be here all week, okay. I know it's a big meeting. As negotiating chair for the bargaining unit, I speak for all teachers covered by the contract. We really and truly are all one team. We're all on the same side. We all give all our hearts to help our kids learn and grow. Especially in these uncertain times, we all have to throw all our weight together. Recruiting and retaining high-quality, dedicated educators are non-negotiable elements in meeting our students' needs. We started off with matching priorities in our salary philosophies, and our initial proposal met with what we thought was a positive reaction. We have seen so many districts across North Dakota already settle this year and deploy their funds, which are also limited, to help get teachers closer to meeting the higher cost of living. A couple of weeks ago, we felt like we could be done by the end of the month. We have 2 more scheduled meetings. End with an ask. My big ask is, can we work together to meet the challenges, including financial, but not only financial, without putting it all on staff, all on budget, all on board? The only way we get there is together.
Thank you, Laura. And next up, we have an administrative report from Dr. Gandhi. Please don't make this funny.
It's hard to do when you're on the heels of the FEA. Thank you for those that got it. Obviously, this is my last board meeting, and today's just been a very weird day in terms of just extremely grateful for the district office and that recognition. It's weird for me because I feel like it's been a privilege to be able to be in the position I'm in, and so to get recognized for what I feel like just doing what I was lucky enough to be trusted enough to do is just a weird feeling. I think the second part about that is I shared the board with this. I shared this to the board when I put in my resignation, but I wish so much of what was used around that term legacy in that video was something that I could independently own. It's just not. The nature of the work that we do and the nature of any leadership position is that you are who you are because of the people you surround yourself with, and the people around this dais and the people in this community have given me the incredible privilege to be able to do something that not many people can do, which is sit in a position for 7 years and be trusted with over 11,000 students' education. And that is something that I don't take lightly, and I'm very grateful for that. So thank you to the board, thank you to all of our staff, and thank you for the community to trust, the trust that you've given me for the last 7 years. Like I said before, I've never wanted to leave the superintendency, and I still didn't. I would retire in this position if I could. It's just I can't have regrets when it comes to also being able to spend more time with my kids, and if I can do that and also serve in a different way. And the reality of the situation is, 7 years ago, I would have never even had that thought. I equated my success to my job and the position I had in my job. But it's this community and this job that's actually taught me that my values are more important, or that my value doesn't have to be just the work I do. My value can be my family too. So if it wasn't for this job, I wouldn't have even come to the recognition that maybe I can still serve and spend more time with my family. So that self-growth for me has been perhaps the biggest accomplishment, and I would not have that if it wasn't for the Fargo community, the people that I have had the privilege to work with for the last 7 years, and the school district. So thank you very much for that. I think with that being said, I will just say my team knows me very well. Fortunately, they let me watch this video, so if I didn't watch it ahead of time, I'd be crying this entire video or this entire board meeting, and that would not make good for YouTube. So I will just now hand it over to Missy to go through our safety committee report.
Yeah, each year we have our safety committee report, and I am honored to be on that committee, which is a very diverse group of teachers, paraprofessionals, behavior techs, and we really look at what safety is. And safety is everything from a sense of belonging all the way to the physical safety of drills and things that we do. But I have a great group of individuals here today that are going to go through the safety committee presentation for you. You already received the report, and they would love to answer your questions after the presentation is given. And I'll just take a second for them each to introduce themselves before we begin and the position they serve.
Good evening. I'm Trish Miller. I'm an ILC teacher for South High, and I was lucky enough to get to do this last year. And so when this came around again this year, I said, I'll do it. And I brought more friends this year.
Hi, I'm Julie Emery Hetland. I am an office assistant at Claire Barton Hawthorne, Claire Barton campus.
Hello, Josh Smith, Safety and Emergency Management Coordinator.
Jen Saar, the Assistant Director for Educational Justice.
And Tristan Love, Director of Educational Justice.
We are missing one team member tonight, and so we are going to just have a quick team meeting as we shuffle our slides. So just give us 1 second, and then we'll get going in our report. Thank you. Okay, so let's get started here. We are going to talk briefly a little about the objective and purpose of the Safety Committee. So the purpose of Fargo Public Schools Safety Committee is to address challenges and safety-related concerns of the FPS staff. Our objectives over the 24-25 school year was to really use the safety definition as our compass. Our topics were surrounding our definition. We addressed the needs of students showing complex behaviors in the classroom, and as last year, we wanted to continue developing recommendations to present to the school board. This year, we talked about professional development, responsiveness to physical incidents. We talked a lot about school safety. We talked about code of character, conduct, and supports, and we went over our climate and culture reflection. And all of those topics are going to be what we talk about tonight. A little bit of wrapped up last year information, and then what we accomplished this year. The first thing we need to do is talk about the definition of safety. Last year, we were so proud of this. This was an accomplishment. We rallied together as a committee and defined safety. We were proud of it. We thought it really was our going forward. So we still use this definition. We still wrestled with some of the topics. What does that mean? How does that fit into our definition? And so just a reminder of our definition: a culture of prevention that protects youth and adults from natural hazards or human actions that may cause physical and or psychological harm or affect one's ability to function in school. We really took this definition to heart, and a lot of our recommendations this year are inclusive of this definition.
So one of the pieces that came out of the safety committee last year in the 23-24 school year was a desire to have more ongoing professional development for all of our staff members, not just certified staff members who might be present during those professional development days or contracted days, but also our classified staff. Specifically in the areas that you can see on your screen: Catalyst, UKERU, CPI, ALICE, those types of things. And so what ended up happening in this current school year is we had our 4 early out days, and we tried to capitalize on those days by keeping all of our staff on in the buildings, but participating in these learning opportunities in a virtual format. So this year we had those 4 days, and they rotated through some of the items that you see on the screen, or actually all of the items that you see on the screen, in addition to restorative practices and reviewing the climate and culture, or sorry, the code of character, conduct, and supports, and also engaging in some of the long-range facility planning conversations. There were three in-person training sessions as well that overlapped. And so in some cases, we had to do a little bit of shifting and juggling, but ultimately we were very proud of the opportunity that we were able to provide for all of our staff. And one of the changes that we made as it relates to CPI and UKERU is that we've been offering that once a month during contracted time. It's something that we have just been able to maintain our certifications for all of our staff members in the buildings that need that type of certification, and something we look forward to continuing in the upcoming school year. You can also see then, as we are wrapping up this year, some of the recommendations that are being brought forward include that ongoing conversation of working with our adults to think about how they're responding to students as they might be engaging in some of those escalated situations. So trying to understand some of the verbal aggression pieces, how can we further enhance, and you'll hear a lot about this as we move into the upcoming school year, a real emphasis on getting back to the core. So focusing on that Tier 1 instruction, whether it's on the academic side or on this behavioral and safety related side, many more supports and conversations about making sure that all of our staff members are equipped in a professional way. And then, as I mentioned, being able to continue that monthly UKERU and CPI training as we move forward. Let's see, as we continue thinking into next year, what we don't have are early out days. So while that worked out beautifully this year, we don't have that in the calendar for next year. And so one of the pieces that we're looking at and planning for, not just looking at, but planning for, is in the January PD day. And so we're looking to have all of our staff, where it would otherwise for our classified staff be a day off of work, keeping them on contract or in their positions where we can provide some specific training to all of them during that time. And then you can see some of the recommendations for topics that came out of this year's safety committee includes more of that crisis response learning, mental health awareness, behavior management, and restorative practices. Another one of the recommendations that came out of the 23-24 school year was a desire to be sure that we were implementing protocols and having clear communication about how do we not just wrap around students during an escalated behavior time, but how are we making sure that we're also considering all of our staff members who might be in that space or near that space when some of those situations happen. And so a couple of the topics that came out of that is, how do we debrief those situations? And then how do we make sure that the adults who might be, again, near that situation or actively involved in those situations have access to the physical and the mental health resources that they too might need and desire to have? And then also giving them time to recover. So one of the things that we heard is sometimes we would work with a student that needed maybe some de-escalation, and when they were ready, we would bring them back to the classroom to re-engage, but we weren't doing a great job of always making sure that our staff members in those environments were also in a spot that it was healthy for everybody. And so one of the pieces that came out of that was we re-engaged our psychological response to crisis manual writers, which consists of a variety of our school-based mental health professionals, the psychologists, our social workers, our school counselors, and some administration, to work through what should this look like in Fargo schools when there's been a situation, and how do we articulate this to be sure that everybody has the information that they need, to make sure that everybody's in a safe place, not just physically, but really leaning into that psychological response as well. And so that's something that was developed early in the school year, shared lots of feedback on it, and then was inserted into that psychological response to crisis manual in, I think, January or February of this year, and has now been a resource that's available for staff members to use. Another piece that we've been intentional about is elevating and communicating our partnership with the Village Family Services Center. Making sure that all their resources are available and known to our staff members and to our buildings. And so they've been able to come into some of our buildings when there have been different situations to help staff members debrief. Often we try to push our own staff members into those situations, but sometimes they too need to be in the audience and participating in the debriefing themselves. And so a great opportunity in our partnership with them. Just recently, we had them into a principal meeting as well, where they've been able to not just say that we're here to debrief on these crisis events, but here's all the ways that we can continue to support the staff and the students in the Fargo Public School District. And so our principals have just had a refresher on those opportunities as well. And so in this area, as we think about moving forward into the 25-26 school year, we know we need to continue to have an intentional focus on how do we wrap around some of these situations through our building emergency response teams, and the way that they wrap around those events that might be happening in our buildings are critical, but that we can't forget about after that as well, and making sure that that all of our folks, our students and our adults in the buildings, are cared for. And so we'll continue to work through those protocols and review them, as well as providing that ongoing training and, as I mentioned, the updated protocols and reviews.
So part of the 23-24 discussion was monitoring safety drills and protocols for all buildings, aligning climate and culture surveys to have common questions regarding safety and improved communication for caregivers. To be very transparent with our caregivers, we sent letters, and there was an article in the School Talk that featured the terminology and what our process is. We upgraded 500 camera systems and the storage for those cameras. Being somebody that is in the office, I very much appreciate that. That we have a monitor that is in our office where we can monitor the hallways and the entrances. And those new cameras were wonderful. Everybody that was a tiny little blur is now, you can see who they are. So that was wonderful. And additional medical supplies, the upkeep of the AED machines, the Narcan, the EpiPens. Those are all things that we hope we never need, but luckily we have them in case of emergency. And increased drill completion.
So as we look at our recommendations, we're going to continue to make improvements to enhancing the physical and electronic security in our buildings. Some of our buildings are there. We still have some that we want to continue to get those camera monitors up in the offices and help those staff feel like they have a better eye on what's happening in their buildings. Part of that is also updating our current panic alarm system in all of our building offices, as that is nearing end of life. One of the asks that has come up, and we're looking at providing more simulated and more emergency scenario type response training and drills for our staff to make it a little more realistic, and exploring a new threat assessment tool to make going through a threat when it comes in a little easier for our staff and give us a standardized district-wide approach to reviewing those and assessing when they come in.
So this year was our first year for the Code of Character, Conduct, and Support, and a wide range of teams, people, staff, and some students gave some feedback on the code. And so last year, one of the, we talked about being the version 1 going into version 2. We wanted to make sure we was able to gather feedback from not only just staff, but caregivers and students. Establish some listening sessions and communications to be able to get some input on like some of the revisions, some of the changes that may be needed, and then to ensure the code of character, conduct, and support is accessible in multiple languages. So what you will see is one of the actions, and we are still in the process of revising the code of character, conduct, and support for the 25-26 school year. But some of the actions and those recommendations have already been put in place. One of which was not only did the code of character, conduct, and support come through the safety committee this year, it also went through the peace committee, which is a combination of parents, students, and staff members to be able to give feedback on some of the things they would like to see and implement in the code of character, conduct, and support. I want to give a shout out to a lot of the principals and administrators that really took out time out of their schedule in April during testing to be able to start to revise the code of character, conduct, and support, give additional feedback. So that makes 3 groups this document has went through to start going through the revision process. And they went through the administrators went through 3 sessions, 3 rounds of really looking at the code of conduct, all the infractions under the code of conduct, looking at character. What do we want Fargo Public School students to how we would like them to carry themselves? And they looked at the support. What support do we offer as a district? How do we support our students socially, emotionally? How do we support their behavior needs? And what do we do to create a positive climate and culture in the schools? And what are the rights and responsibilities of staff, students, and parents? And the last point is, the last 2 points. One is when we finish with the updated version for the 25-26 school year, we're really looking at, can we offer it in multiple languages to make it more accessible? We've even looked at the language of the code of character, conduct, and support itself to make sure it's not like a policy that has basically it reads at a college level, but trying to make sure the documents is accessible for students, for parents, for even our staff, in just plain language or what we would like them to know about the culture and climate of our district. And the last part is the district is preparing instructional lessons to help teachers be able to teach this code of character, conduct, as support as a part of Tier 1. We're trying to move it from just a document to something that we live and breathe in the middle, like in our schools, in our classrooms. And that doesn't happen without those things being taught. So I really want to shout out our Chastity, our restorative practices coordinator, for really spearheading that and working towards making sure next year teachers have the ability and have lessons that they can teach students and be able to even know for themselves, to be able to know, like, what does this look like? What does this mean? Because what we know from research is when students understand what's there, how it impacts them, and how to make better decisions, what does their support structures look like, we know that the climate and culture of the school will be physically and psychologically more safe. Sorry, not done yet. So the recommendations for next year, so it's finalizing basically finalizing that's what we need to do throughout the rest of this year. Develop and distribute the teacher-friendly lessons, and then to embed those code of conduct related instructions, so those Tier 1, and make sure those things are available to teachers at the beginning of the year. And the last part about this is, and the reason why we don't just call it a code of conduct is because it's a community document. It's for everyone. It's not just for students. It's for students. It's for staff. It's for parents. It's for caregivers. It's like, this is Fargo Public Schools, and this is how we support the well-being of not only our staff and our students. And so, and I think, like, we want to promote a shared understanding of those norms and not just be, just want to have, we have our way and it's unwritten, but have that written down in a way where if someone was to come into our district brand spanking new, we are able to go over this document with them and talk about what the culture and climate of our school district looks like. Thank you.
Lastly, the Climate and Culture Survey. In 2023-24, we recommended that the regular school climate and cultural survey gets sent out and it becomes a regular thing. It becomes part of our culture. We want feedback. We really wanted to understand that stakeholders' perception of safety, and continuing asking those questions was a recommendation. However, if we're going to continue asking the questions, we wanted the questions to be aligned so that between the levels and the stakeholders to allow for themes, allow for wins, allow for things that we can potentially change. As an outcome to those, surveys continued as planned. Alignment of questions did happen, which is going to allow us to look at some data, some wins, which we'll see in our chart. Combines staff climate data with the virtual vital survey in collaboration with human capital. And this was for staff survey fatigue. There's a lot of surveys out there. We want good information. We want true information. And so kind of combining those to not have that staff survey fatigue. So within our chart, the data that is collected here that we are able to show growth were questions that were aligned and questions that were asked again. Not all questions were aligned, which is why we weren't able to show growth in everything. However, there's some really good wins in here. There's some growth. There is some substantial data that you can tell this district is working hard. It's working hard to reach its students, it's working hard to reach its stakeholders, and making sure that people are feeling safe within the district. So you can see within your elementary students, we're asking them if they are safe at school. We're asking if they feel like they belong. They're asking if they feel like their teachers care about me. And then there's growth in every single one of those columns. You can see within the secondary students, there's also growth. Staff and caregivers. The school district is really working hard on providing safety for students and staff and stakeholders. So within the Climate and Culture Survey, here's some recommendations because we were able to see some data. We would like to administer the survey once a year, but in the spring. This will allow for some full experiences to happen for some. There's policies and procedures in place to help with some of the things that happen. Let's give those a chance, and let's then maybe instead of getting some premature responses. It will also help address survey fatigue. These are really important questions and we want them to continue, but knowing that there's a lot of important questions out there. Ensure valid, actionable data that informs continuous improvement despite possibility of platform change. So there is a conversation about the possibility of platform change, and it is in the board report that if there is a platform change, let's not lose the depth of these questions. These questions are vital and important. So just really knowing that those questions are on the forefront of this committee's mind, that if there's platform changes, let's see how we can make sure that those questions are still part of it. We did reflect together as a committee, and one thing that we're really proud of is our broad representation. There is administration, staff, multiple levels, buildings across the district, voices from everywhere that we can bring in to really get this whole vision of safety met for the district. There are openings, and looking at filling those openings for safety committee, looking for those buildings that maybe don't have representation. What is a level that does not have representation? How can we fill that? And so that is one thing that safety committee does reflect on and did reflect on again this year. One other thing we're really proud of is we continue to network with all other committees. We don't pretend to reinvent the wheel or pretend like safety committee is all that's only itself. We ask, we pull in others, we make sure that we're working together in partnership with our outside entities, anything that we can do to really promote safety. We want to continue that. We really want to continue to review data, monitor current efforts, and offer recommendations. It has been powerful to see all of the things that we brought up and recommended as a committee, and then where they went in 1 year. Putting together the slideshow was powerful to see all of those things that were addressed. That's awesome. We want to continue that as a committee. Safety committee recommendations reflect the shared desire to ensure all students feel safe, supported, and ready to learn every day. Goes back to that definition of safety. We want what's best for the students at Fargo Public Schools and work really hard together as a committee to see if we can get that done. Thank you. Questions about what we presented tonight, what you have in your board report, how anything that is there to be wondered.
Thank you very much. Nikki?
I don't have any questions, but I want to send a sincere thank you to each and every one of you for the work that you do, how important this really is. And I really gained a lot from this report, and I'm very encouraged by what you found. Your numbers are wonderful and all improved over the last round that you did this, but you each play a critical part. And when I share with people in the community about our safety or about concerns, I treat students and staff kind of as a lump because they are together as a unit. And I really appreciate the emphasis that's put on staff because we all think about students. We don't always think about the people doing the work. Thank you.
Robin?
Yes, thank you. I agree with everything Nikki said. This committee was created back at a time when there was a lot of physical assaults on teachers. And that was about 2017, 2018. And it's really nice to watch your work evolve. Not only are your survey data responses impressive, but your hard data is as well. And I would really like administration to share some of the UCARO and CPI data results because they are incredibly impressive, like 83% lower holds using the UCARO process. So that would be helpful for me as a board member. And I think the most important quote in your presentation was, and students feel safe, supported, and ready to learn every day. We continue to hear we should only teach the 3 R's, but we can't teach the 3 R's until we unpack all the other stuff. So thank you for your work. I look forward to continue watching your work. Thank you.
Great. And Greg?
There was a slide a while, I think it was towards the start, about having adult access to like the village and incorporating some stuff in the crisis manual. What is the, I guess, uptake of that been? You know, it's like one thing to say, oh yeah, we're gonna offer, you know, these services and anyone can call up the village and something, but do we know if people are actually taking advantage of that?
Well, I don't have specific numbers. Yes, right. We are hearing, and that's really why we brought the village in as well in the spring. Is just recognizing that there has been use. The other thing that I will add to that is anytime there is a significant crisis in the district, and I'm going to say right, like if there specifically is a death, I tend to be very close to that, and that's where we're also trying to make sure that those supports are coming in at those significant times. I think one of the things that we know and recognize is sometimes we don't realize that support is available until unfortunately you're in a position that you are in need of the support. And so trying to make sure during those times we're also educating and wrapping around and making them aware. Was certainly if that is a number that you're looking for, I'd be happy to reach out to the village to see how many situations they have been involved with, but that's not a number that we in-house have been tracking, but trying to promote through communication and just collaboration.
I think what I would add to that is we used to probably have a set number of hours we could use for PD through the village that we distributed through the district level. And what we realized is that we need to empower our buildings to pick the sessions they needed at their building. So we did kind of get rid of the middle and said principals we brought the village into a principal meeting. We went through all the sessions they could offer, and then principals could request themselves for what they needed at their building. And so I know that we had several elementary buildings bring in, but it wasn't the same session at each building. I think that was probably the powerful piece for me, that we were maybe slowing them down of accessing when we could maybe step out of the way.
In addition to that, we really, I want to say doubled down, but probably quadrupled down on the communication out to staff directly about the resources that are there, put some new information on the website, put it in articles, because we knew through our survey that there was a lack of awareness, because we did have a lot of systems in place, but they weren't being leveraged. So Greg, I don't know the exact number, but it's not for lack of communication now, and having the village come in and chat with our principals, have that face contact, talk with our team so we have a better understanding how to leverage that, I think is really going to continue to yield the results that we want to see in FPS.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions or comments for the safety committee? Okay, thank you so much for all you do and for your report. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And next, that takes us to our strategic reflections, and that's going to come to us from Dr. Gandhi.
Yeah, thank you. In your board packets, we have your May strategic reflections, and so we will stand for any questions. I do just want to add a couple comments on that. At the last governance meeting, I did ask the governance committee if this could be the last monthly strategic reflections for this school year, seeing how at this meeting, we're also going to be adopting the next unified strategic and operational plan for the next school year. So there will not be one in June. I did take a little bit of a liberty and ask that at governance without checking with our cabinet team first, just because it was best of intention, knowing that in June, we have a little bit of transition in leadership, and then also that school's out on June 5th. So my view has always been that the strategic initiative monitoring results reports that you get is the big gamut of monitoring the entire strategic initiative and the minutes. But we know that sometimes we have to adjust our strategy mid-year based on some of the key indicators leading to those measures, or based on how we're seeing those strategies be successful. So that is why we do the strategic reflections on a monthly basis. And I bring that up because after the governance meeting, there was a good point made by a cabinet member that I really hope that just because there's no June reflections on the strategies that we may have pivoted because it was such a short period of time after kids left and at the end of the school year, that doesn't mean that the board doesn't hold us accountable to the summative measures that we did tell you that we are going to make progress towards, or that we're working towards. That data comes in June. So this next fall, and then even as you monitor next year's Strategic Initiative 1, please go back to that Strategic Initiative 1 measures and Strategic Initiative 2 measures. That is where our primary focus is. That is where we want the board to hold us accountable. And we want you to ask those hard questions that we need on what are we doing differently, what are we doing for our learners. So that's just my plea that please continue to hold us accountable. Just because we don't have June reflections doesn't mean that over the summer we still won't get those summative data points for those key measures that we are tracking in Strategic Initiative 1. So when those are there, I think administration would welcome the opportunity to share more about those and how that's pivoting our work and what that's going to set for our strategic plan going for next year. So I would just say don't forget about that, because that is something that we think would be an important board conversation and where we want that focus as well. So with that being said, you have the May strategic reflections in your packet. We have most of the strategic initiative leaders in this room or available at the dais for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments about the strategic reflections? Nothing? Greg?
Yeah, one thing that I thought was interesting that stood out to me, the Strategic Initiative 2, Result 1, Standard 6, the restorative practices, the percent of students who have a major incident and then go on to have another major incident. And I know this is a baseline year. I complained about that 8 months ago about not having this data. And now we have the data and I'm happy about it. Yeah, I wondered if we could take just like 1 minute to try and maybe make the connection between the presentation we just had, and maybe specifically with the code of all those things. I can't remember them all now. But that also being kind of new and wondering, I like, because it's a baseline, I don't really have a point of reference, but I know that a lot of work has been done around recidivism and restorative practices and the development of this code. And I was wondering if you could maybe put it in that context and kind of give me an idea of, is this good?
Yeah. Great question. I'll take my best shot at starting. Bob, Missy, feel free, Tristan, Jen, to chime in as well. I will go on the record and say, while the metric is something we're really proud of, and we are reconsidering the term recidivism, we use that this year with lack of any other term, but there's so much other association with recidivism and criminal justice that sometimes it takes the focus away from what we're trying to do. So that term may change down the road. That is a conversation the district's happening. But I do think that it's been successful, even though it's been a baseline year. The whole reason for that was, how do we continuously improve in our district using the right, measuring what matters? And where we were prior to having a metric on, do students recommit the same infraction more than once, or does the same student commit an infraction more than once? Prior to being able to track that as a metric of success on the work that we're doing around trauma-informed care and our disciplinary practices, we were only using exclusionary metrics. So we were only using, in previous strategic plans and operational plans, out-of-school suspension rate and expulsion rate. And more so than just the baseline year showing success, it shows a mindset and how we drive our decisions. So prior to this becoming the measure of success, a principal might have been put in a situation previously where they're like, man, if this student did something, I might now have to recommend an expulsion, but that's going to increase my expulsion numbers that RUPOC's monitoring or the state is monitoring or whatever the case is monitoring, right? And we don't want a principal to ever have to have that internal conflict of like, what's best for the student versus what is an exclusionary measure being that is being measured or held against them for school accountability or other purposes. So that's the reason that we said, what's the ultimate goal? The ultimate goal is for a student to relearn that they've committed harm and not to do that harm again in a school. So the best way to measure that is to truly see, do they learn from this consequence or this interaction that they had with this administrator so they don't recommit an infraction. So even though it's a baseline year, I think that even just shifting to collecting the right measure has been successful for us. And I think that down the road, it's not just taking a look at the rate of recidivism, but if we do this continuously, and I'll use the term recidivism for now, if we do this continuously over time, then we should be able to build a data set that says, not only is this our rate of recidivism, but these are the most commonly used, according to our code of conduct, commonly used consequences assigned. And then you can take a look at the correlation between the consequence and the rate of recidivism, and then even adjust the consequence in your code of conduct if that's not adjusting over time as either. So ultimately, when you measure the right thing, you really can then identify the successes of your strategies or not. And that was the intent behind some of that. So I'll let Bob, Missy, Tristan, or Jen, or anyone else speak that they may have as well.
Perfect. So like Dr. Gundy said, the first part of this was measuring the right thing. Previously, it seems like we measured like OSS or suspension or the consequence we gave students. And so this year, two things happened. The first thing was the change in the behavior report. and being able to use the behavior report to get the data output. So now that we have the data output, then we was able to do the calculations for repeat behavior infractions. And so another thing our restorative practice facilitator Chastity did was she was able to look at some national trend data averages, and she shared that at our combined principals meeting. And it was like, it was amazing because we are at a district level, we are outperforming the nation in terms of this recidivism, in terms of like our recidivism is lower than the national average. Actually, I think when we looked at the data, I think we were at like 90 something percent of our students didn't have any, like it was like 92% of our students didn't have any major behavior infraction. And when you look at that through an MTSS model, you test the fidelity of your tier one system determine whether or not your tier one support 80% of your students. So at this rate, our tier one support, so basically our baseline level is supporting 92% of our students, like have zero behavior infractions. And so the recidivism numbers or the repeat behavior numbers you do see are from students that have at least one. And so then I guess that answer is simple, like, is it good? Is it bad? It's great. What Chastity presented to the principals was the district is not on fire. Students are not chaotically misbehaving everywhere. Like a large majority of our students are coming to school, doing the right thing, and they're not having major behavior infractions. And we see that not only at like students that just have one major behavior, but from the 0 to 2, we see that probably all the way up to 0 to 5. Like, we get a chance now to look at those students that are having those repeat behaviors, and then through our behavior reporting form, we get a chance to look at, well, is a restorative conference happen? Did that student get sent to ISS? And we look at all the interventions that the school uses to be able to support students. And now we get the chance to say, but did it work? And so we determine that by, well, if we have to keep suspending and doing these exclusionary discipline practices or eventually expelling, then maybe we have to look back at ourselves as a system and determine, well, do those interventions best support this student, or do we need the right mix of interventions to best support students, and do we need to adjust those? And so even though this is a baseline year, we've learned a lot about ourselves and how we support student behavior, and it was overwhelmingly positive. So our message was, let's keep doing the good work and keep doing what we're doing and keep trending in the right direction, but let's also look at the number of students that are not being successful after they're having major after major after major. And where we start to look is tier one. Are we really looking at tier one fidelity, even though it's supporting 92% of students, but could it be more if we do a better job at tier one and pre-teaching what's in the code of character, conduct, and support? Is this willful defiance, willful disobedience, or is this just students not understanding that, if I do X, then Y is a consequence of it? And sometimes what research shows, if students were to know what the consequence could be, then they'll make a better decision. Good.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments about the strategic reflections? Okay, all right, go ahead, Robin. Oh, were you getting ready for the consent agenda? Okay, I'll look for approval of the consent agenda.
I move approval of the consent agenda with the human capital addendum.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Robin and a second from Ally. Any conversation, questions? Okay, all in favor, please say yes.
Yes. Yes.
Any opposition, same sign. That motion passes 9-0. That brings us to our business items. The first one is the Unified Strategic and Operational Plan. That's Memo 114, and I'm going to turn to Bill for that one.
Thank you very much. You have in your board packet the FPS Unified Strategic and Operational Plan. There are a couple of minor changes based on some feedback we got from a couple of board members, and I'm just going to run through those really quick because they're all under SI5. Under Result 1, we had a measure you can see down there at the bottom. It's really, thank you, Robin, for this term, a foundational practice. It's something that we just do. It wasn't something that needed to be measured, and it didn't need to be in the strategic plan. So that measure and its associated operational plan projects have been removed. Under Strategic Initiative 5, Result 2, I had a measure about using a tool to track our strategic plan. That's again a foundational practice. There was no reason for it to be a specific measure, so we've removed that. And then you can see in red a couple of measures where we changed the language a little bit to be more clear on what we thought success would be so that we can calculate it as a measure. And then under Strategic Initiative 5, Result 3, we changed the wording slightly of measure number 4 to just be more clear in what it was saying. If you have any questions, most of the strategic team leaders are here.
Okay, Robin?
I move that we approve the 25-26 Unified Strategic Operational Plan as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Robin and a second from Ally. Any questions, conversation? Nothing? Okay, I think we're ready for a roll call.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Jason Nelson,
Yes.
Kristen Nelson,
Yes.
Robin Nelson,
Yes.
Holenberger,
Yes.
Berglund,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Day,
Yes.
Christensen Meineer.
Yes, that motion passes 9-0. And next up, we have the second reading of our attendance boundary changes. That is memo 115. And I believe, Missy, will you be sharing this with us? Thank you.
So this is our second reading of the boundaries, and as we know, there is no perfect choice for the growth of Fargo, especially at our south end, as we're looking at prediction. We are not at a place where we have enough students in our south end to build a new elementary school. We usually want 50% of that population to be there before we would build. In the next 5 years, I think a lot of things will change. We'll have to monitor it yearly as we go forward. And part of that has to do with what changes when the diversion is complete. Does that change our growth pattern? So as we're looking at that and going forward, I think that is something we are gonna have to talk about is if we ended up building on 76 new elementary, it feels so tight to all of our other elementaries. Is that something we're gonna have to talk about in the future? Because we also know right now on this proposal that's in front of you, some of our elementaries internally, we are changing boundaries on to try to get the most utilization so that we're running, trying to run at least 3 section buildings as we go forward. So there's not a perfect solution. I did appreciate Sarah from the principal of Bennett came to the last meeting. If we had any questions, Bobby Olson is here tonight if we have any questions directly related to a school. But right now, some of the things that we're up against is that within this next 5 years, we'll be over capacity at both Bennett and Centennial. And that's the forecast that we have right in front of us. Going forward. When we get to overcapacity, it's just a reminder, the things that go is sometimes we have to not have music in the music room because we turn the music rooms into classrooms. It's the ancillary space for interventions, counseling, different services. So that is one of the long-range facility goals is that we always look at the services that we have to give every day and we have adequate space for those as we go forward. I think one of the hard parts and listening to the parents speak today, it could be any parent from any neighborhood, letting us know that this is an inconvenience. This is not what they signed up for, and that I really feel for our families as we go forward. So as we look at the boundaries, this is the best suggestion, the proposal in front of you. I have run some other ones since then. For example, I did have a board member say a little concerned we're not bringing Centennial down more since they have a little more room for growth up to 76th. When we looked at that, the hard part about that, when you look at your proposal in front of you, is that the little neighborhood that's right below Ed Clapp, but is across the street from Centennial. And so that is, we always talked about trying to keep a neighborhood together. That would go to the school. That would be up to the board to tell me if that is something they wanted to change. And when I ran the numbers, then we said if those students would go to Eagles, then we wouldn't change the north boundary between Eagles and Lincoln. And that still puts Eagles at about 92% utilization. Would love to have them a little bit lower. The other option we had, and we talked about the first meeting between Lincoln and Eagles, is that the piece that we have going to Eagles could be split. One of the long-range facilities said to follow roadways to make it more clear what the boundaries are. So that's why I went on that side. Lincoln does have more space. One advantage that Lincoln has that I think we might need is that Lincoln has already had a remodel done around handicap accessible bathrooms. And that would allow us to have a specialized program there. And both Eagles and Kennedy have specialized programs that would require that. So that might give us an option if needed as we go forward. And I certainly would answer any questions, or maybe you guys have things that you would like to ask about or share.
I just have one question, and it might be because I misheard you. Did you say one of the suggestions was to move the proposed centennial boundary further south?
So if you look at page, and if we go there, page 3, there's a little pink box on top.
Oh, okay.
To
I
take
was thinking
that-
about the southern
yeah,
border
just take
moving it
that
south, not,
little
okay.
box.
I
Yeah, no,
understand. Okay.
yep.
Sorry. Thank you.
Can I go? Oh,
Ally, sorry. Okay, sorry. Kristen.
oh, thank you.
I was looking at my notes, my papers.
Can you, just a couple things. I want to hear more about transportation again, if we could go a little bit farther in detail about that. And then can you also talk about the grandfathering process, just
Yeah.
to clarify a little bit more, especially with the folks in the audience who were talking about that they're going to have future kids at these schools and how that works.
So right now, across our district, you can petition to any school. And so if you're a Fargo resident. And so, but when you petition currently, it depends on space in that grade level. So if it puts us above our target class size number, the answer would be no. And so, and you attend the school you were supposed to. With grandfathering, we're saying the kids who are currently next fall at any building, we will account for in our numbers, and that's what are accounted for here, that if they choose to stay at the building, they would have an automatic petition in to remain at the school, not their new school. Now, the only thing is we cannot provide the transportation. And I think in the past that has happened, but that is one thing that has become tighter is just the busing piece. The bus company is looking forward to having a year to go through the new boundaries and set up their routes. They think that'd be very advantageous for them to rethink how they are doing things and let us know what the routes would be. So grandfathering allows that. Now, if you have a child that's not in school next fall, you could do our original petitioning process. And I will say that the important thing to know that we usually start accepting them the first day of school the year before, and we do take them in date order. So there is no special points or anything for that. We just take them in date order. If we have space, they're allowed as they go forward. Does that help, Kristen?
Yeah. Yeah, I understand, where they're coming from, and but also where it's hard because I understand both sides, especially, with the young siblings would have to go to 2 different schools and one family maybe 3 or 4 schools. So that would be really difficult. But yeah, I'd love to hear more about the transportation piece.
So the transportation for whether it's grandfathered or a traditional petition, the parents have to provide the transportation because the transportation's only provided to your school of assigned school.
Yep. Yeah, so that I know, but more about, you know, the rural part for the proposed Kennedy, what that transportation piece is going to look like. Do
Well,
we know that yet?
that's what the bus company would like to see is
Okay.
how they would change their routes. But they did feel that they would change their routes to make sure it was as efficient as possible. We don't have more routes. Yeah.
I have a question about, so the petition process, once somebody petitions in and gets accepted, do they stay in there or do they have to re-petition every year?
So for elementary, and I'll let Bob talk about secondary, once you're accepted in, then you're called a continuing petition, and you let us know that you would like to come back in by May 1st each year, and they find out by the end of May if they're able to accept their petition for the next year. If you're new for elementary, we go through the regular petitions August 1st.
Okay, thank you. There was other.
And then Bob has the
Oh, sorry,
petitions for
Bob.
secondary.
And then at the secondary, just because the buildings are larger and it is somewhat easier to accept a family and continue at that school. At the secondary, once you have a petition, you are in that building for as long as that student would be in that grade band. We then just had conversations at the principals meeting that we're going to extend that to the high school as well. So if a student is accepted on a petition for middle school, they will go through that high school feeder system as well.
Okay, thank you. Ally?
So I know that this is obviously specific to this small area, but I've gotten a lot of emails and obviously a few of the parents spoke about this tonight about secondary and what that affects are. Do we know when we're going to have that conversation or to look at those? I mean, I do really feel for these families talking about sending their kid to an elementary school and then having a very small portion of that elementary school go with those kids to their secondary schools. I do think that is a big issue. And I would like to know if we are planning on looking at that or addressing that at any time as I look to make this decision.
Bob, did you have something? And Jason, you looked like you were gonna.
Yeah, as I look at the maps, and correct me if I'm wrong, Missy, we have several elementary schools that then get divided into the secondary. So this wouldn't be
the only.
Yeah, this is not
anomaly.
unique. We
I
have
mean,
4 or 5.
Because Clara Bar and Hawthorne goes north-south. I mean, looking at the maps, there's a lot that break up that way. So this is not an anomaly.
Bob?
So as much as we would love to have our entire district be a true feeder system, as we look at the capacity of the different buildings that we have, and knowing that each building is unique, and our feeder system at the secondary is unique, where Carl Ben really feeds South High School. Although South High School has probably more capacity than some of our other buildings, if we want that true feeder system, there's only so many students who can attend at Carl Ben who then transfer to South High School. Discovery, which then feeds into Davies, we have to accommodate to make sure that we look at what is that true load capacity of those two buildings and how they interact together. So for us to have a true feeder system, elementary, middle, high school, just our buildings are different at the secondary, and so is the total number of students who can attend. And that's why there are many split elementaries that go to different middle schools, but we do then keep that consistency from middle school to high school.
Dr. Gandhi?
Yeah, and the only thing I would add is that, like Missy said, all of these factors in isolation have challenges and benefits, and that's the challenge when you have competing priorities and how do you make the decision. So for administration, when we bring these recommendations to the board, we have to make these decisions based on the guidance the board has approved through the long-range facilities plan. Specifically, there is a section that says these are the factors that you should consider when you're responding to enrollment increases or decreases. And at least through my tenure here, consistent feeder pattern between middle school to high school has been on that list, but a consistent feeder pattern from elementary to middle school has not. So that's how we design the recommendations that we make, putting those factors as paramount when we're responding to enrollment increases or decreases.
there other comments or questions? Yeah, Nikki?
I've got several questions, but I'll try to get a few of them into sentences here. I'm concerned about I-94, and I'm concerned about busing kindergartners for a lengthy time of day. Can you share a little more behind that? How long would they truly be on a bus? And they won't be able to bike to school anymore. That's probably accurate, right?
Yes, I think that is too far. And it's probably similar to what we went through when Kennedy went to South on there. So the rural routes that we have currently are longer routes, but and Bob, you might have to help me out. I don't remember them telling us that any route was an hour and a half or anything like that. So that's what the bus company has to come back to us with is how many stops, how long would it be as we go forward. We're not disrupting the middle school routes for those areas. And so I guess I am hopeful that they'll be reasonable. They should be as we go forward with those routes. The I-94, we are just struggling because the enrollment at Bennett and Kennedy, without even taking past 76, we still think is going to grow. It's probably Bennett slowing down a little bit. Centennial actually has some developments that will still keep feeding that. So that is one of the hard pieces there. So we do think another new building would really be the majority of students from that Kennedy area when we build that new building south. But I think it would be probably 6 to 8 years. That's my best guess. But that's why we have to monitor. Our monitoring gets weaker the further out we go, for our best guess. So we have to keep examining it every year.
Thank you. When I look at the maps of the proposed boundaries versus what they are now, that's a massive amount for Kennedy. Is it just because our students are more sparse in those areas that it covers a larger landmass?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any way, you had mentioned like with Eagles that there was a possibility that maybe some of them could go to Lincoln? Is there any way to bring this far enough south not to have to disrupt these 23 families? I mean, if we push Eagles a little bit north into Lincoln, if we pull that one little jagged spot back into Centennial, can we go farther south? Is there just any other option we can look at?
So one of the issues we ran into is that Rose Creek, the golf course, is really sparsely populated. And so we can't gain much there. That made a difference on that.
Okay. Thank you. And then my other question with grandfathering has to do with the siblings piece. I know that we can do that for an initial student, but what happens like if there's a kiddo in kindergarten now and in 2 years, the younger one starts?
Then
we look at siblings.
The option we would have is our normal petition process. Yeah.
Okay.
I will say, because we just went through this at Bennett a few years ago and moved kids to Centennial, we had families kind of go either way. So some families said, I'd rather just start at Centennial as soon as I can, and because I know I'll have busing. And then some families said, I'm going to keep my child here and will apply for petition. So I guess I saw both.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Namal?
I think my biggest concern here is the petition, because if we're going to have all these changes that are happening, they're going to be more petition. And then what are we going to do? That's my biggest.
Petition has a limiting factor, the normal petitions, so that we have it drawn out that we can't go above targeted class size per grade. So we have to say no if we're at that point.
Okay, other questions or comments? Greg?
Yeah, really quickly about the petitioning process. I wanted to maybe point out that by balancing the utilization of the schools, which is the overarching goal here, I think it's going to make petitioning potentially more successful because Bennett Elementary aren't going to be at 101% capacity. If we're successful getting it down to 85%, there's actually a chance of a successful petition, whereas currently there's no way.
That is correct. Right now, I don't know, Mr. Olson, but if you don't mind coming up. Centennial is a very good example that right now, we're on the verge of, we have 640 kids at the building. Is that correct, Bobby?
About 650. Yep.
Sorry. Yeah, but so you can't accept a petition because we're at the max in all of our classes.
Yeah, and so, we would have maybe a grade level here or there, but otherwise, when we go through it, like our first and second grade, looking at next year, we would be looking at 20.2 kids in first grade. Second grade's a concern, 21.6, and so just 2 kids puts us at that number. The way that our growth has been, we're likely going to hit that number. And so when I look at third grade, that's yet another concern. And we're at currently 24 kids. And so if we gain just 5 kids in third grade, and we're at that number again. And so those are a couple of concerns right there. Our kindergarten's pretty tough situation right now because in the past, by now, we would have had like probably 70 kids registered. We currently have 97. And so quite a jump with that. And so overall, our Centennial population, when I first got there 4 years ago, I think we were at like 559, something like that. So to go to 650 is 90 kids right there over a 4-year period. So with that, it's hard for us. I feel like we have to stay pretty guarded when we get, relatively close, but we're more than relatively close in those situations. In fourth grade, we're currently at 23.8. So again, 6 kids puts us at that number. So we're just not even a stone's throw away at most every grade level. So.
I guess I'm taking over. Any other questions? Okay, one more, and then I'll look for a motion so we can discuss this on the floor.
Thank you. Just clarification, as parents have mentioned and had also emailed us, that this is the 4th elementary school. And is this why? Is it because we're at capacity at those other schools that we are looking at Kennedy?
Yes, Kennedy does have the space.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, would anybody like to make a motion? Greg?
Yeah, I move that we approve the attached boundary change implementation plan and direct administration to proceed with the implementation for the 2026-27 school year.
Second.
Greg made the motion and Naimal seconded the motion. Further discussion? Okay, Anne Marie, it looks like we're ready for a roll call.
If it's okay, I'll call you last.
Thank
Robin?
you.
Okay, thank you. Jason Nelson.
Yes.
Kristen Nelson.
Yes.
Olenberger.
No.
Berkland.
Yes.
Clark.
Yes.
Day.
Yes.
Gullickson.
Yes.
Robin Nelson.
Yes, motion passes 7-1. Next item on our agenda is contract for transportation of students. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm looking at the consent. I'm a little rusty, aren't I? 2526 meal prices, memo 116. Who would like to introduce that? Greg?
All right, so every year we have to look at our school meal prices, and Cindy Hoganson does a great job managing the finances among all the other stuff when it comes to our nutrition services. And if anyone recalls last year, I can kind of give you the short version, but basically the federal government really likes us to charge a certain dollar amount for our meals. There's kind of like a target that they really want each meal to cost, or not cost, that we should be charging per meal. And Fargo, we we always charge less than what the federal government wants us to be charging. So really, the option is either we raise our prices to meet what the federal government wants us to charge, or we can raise it by a certain minimum amount to basically indicate that, hey, we're raising our prices, but we're not going to quite meet the standard or the target yet. And what the recommendation that is in front of us is exactly that, us saying, yeah, we'll raise it by 10 cents a meal, just to really, it's mostly a compliance thing. We would all, I'm sure, love not to raise meal prices, but this is really the minimum that we that we can raise meal prices without getting in trouble. So that's what the recommendation is. Can I make the motion, even though I'm kind of
Absolutely.
introducing?
You
it?
should
All right,
make the
wonderful.
motion.
All right. So with that being said, I move that we approve the nutrition services meal price and extra milk increases as proposed for the 25-26 school year.
Second.
Okay. Greg made the motion, Nikki was the second. Before we vote or have discussion, I would say that the reason that the feds want us to have higher meal prices is they want to encourage us to buy healthier fruit and vegetables and healthier food. So that's really the reasoning behind that. Any discussion on the recommendation, motion? Dr. Gandhi?
Yeah, I think Greg kind of touched on this, but the ability to only do the incremental change to meet the Fed standard for meals is contingent upon your financial management of your nutritional services program and having a certain amount of fund balance to be able to do that. And Cindy Hoganson, year after year, continues to run our program in such an efficient way that affords us to have an incremental change versus having a drastic increase to get to the Fed norm. So again, just want to commend our team for the great work that they do that allow us to keep the raises or the price increases low year after year.
Yeah, agreed. And I would add that the nutrition services budget is completely separate from any other of our general funds or building funds. So yes, thank you, Cindy, for your great work in management. Any other questions? Okay, I think we're ready to go, Anne Marie.
Kristen Nelson,
Yes.
Olenberger,
Yes.
Brooklyn,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Day,
Yes.
Gullickson,
Yes.
Jason Nelson,
Yes.
Robin Nelson.
Yes. Motion carries 8-0. Next item is we have completed our business section, so board reports. Our board outside liaison assignment review. Everybody who is assigned to a certain community liaison assignment did complete this overview that asks questions about if it's an effective, active group, is the presence from a school board member needed and or relevant, and do you recommend this liaison assignment continuing? I will add that there are a couple of these, such as C3 Tech, SEEK. I believe that those might be the only two, well, calendar committee, some of them require board member membership. So we really don't have a say whether we can or cannot continue that. But with that, thank you for everybody that completed the report. Does anybody have any other additions that was not reported? Okay, well, thank you all for your meetings outside of our board meetings. We're pretty busy outside of regular board meetings, are we not? Let's move on to committee liaison and correspondence reports. Ellie, can we start with you?
Sure. So let's see. I had the opportunity to attend the Davies Scholarship Award breakfast. It was absolutely wonderful to be able to be there and to celebrate all of the amazing work of our students. So many different scholarships were awarded. And it was just really, really impactful to see the staff rallying around their kids and really celebrating their successes. So I really, really enjoyed being able to be a part of that. And I've just been really busy with negotiations. I will echo Laura's comments, and I really do feel like we are a part of one team. And I really hope that we can continue to be a part of that one team to get a contract decided here for the next upcoming 2 years. So thank you to the team, both FEA and board, for all of the work on that. And yeah, that's all I got.
Thank you, Jason.
Nothing significant to report. Thanks, Robin.
Okay, thank you. Namal.
I don't have much, but I get to meet Dr. Steiner. We had a great meeting, me and him, and that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. School is winding down. It's busy for everybody. Nikki.
Thank you. I held off on the next CEA meeting for May, or was it June? Maybe it's June, because with the changeover in superintendents and everybody's real busy with negotiations. And yes, I too hope we can continue to move forward and in the good manner that we have been able to move forward. So that's about it. CEA will probably start meeting again after our reorg in July.
Greg?
I think the only thing noteworthy is I met with Rupak and Bill to discuss the unified plan for a couple hours, and that was, I think, a good conversation.
Thank you. Melissa?
Yeah, I'm going to share all of the updates from negotiations in executive session, but we have been quite busy and we've had a lot of productive meetings. We have one tomorrow night with the FEA, and then our committee meets on Thursday. My other liaison is I'm on the health insurance committee, and I just wanted to share that on our meeting last Tuesday, we voted to increase the insurance premiums for both medical and dental. Medical was by 7%, dental was by 5%. This was after looking at a lot of data from our provider, and that will be presented to the board sometime in June, I believe. So that's about all I have.
Thank you for serving as the negotiations chair. Big commitment right now. Kristen?
Outside of working hard at negotiations, nothing to report.
Very good. I guess I get to give the president's report. I really didn't prepare anything, but I would say that tomorrow morning we have a work session. We will be making some difficult, complex decisions based upon legislative action from our state legislature that include continuation of our current funding system, to consider the 3% annual cap that is now coming down with us from the state, and what we will consider for upcoming building projects and how those are funded. So no decisions can be made during a work session, but I do look forward to some more casual conversation. I think we start at 8:30 tomorrow, correct? Okay. I think that's all I have. The next item would be an executive session, and maybe if Melissa were to make this motion, we could take a bit of a break and come back to the room.
Can I go before she does?
Sure.
Before we go into executive session, I would ask that if you do have updates regarding where we are in negotiations or the status of current items or certain tentative agreements, that you give them an open session, because negotiations executive session has to be limited for purposes of strategy.
So it's not necessarily an update. I'm going to tell the group where we're at, because we're at a cusp of an offer counter, and I want to make sure I have board consensus to move forward with what we're going to be talking about tomorrow night.
Okay, but you don't want to update them on any? You don't want to update them on any tentative agreements?
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we have two lawyers talking right now. So go ahead, Melissa.
Okay, that means I have to get out my binder.
I'm sorry, you don't have to.
No, I should have. That was a good catch, so I appreciate you.
The alternative is we can come out of executive session and then you could share the tentative agreements, then you would have more time to prepare.
let's do that.
Okay,
Thanks.
okay. So I would look for a motion to enter executive session. I expect that will come from Melissa.
Sure. I move that we go into executive session for the purpose of negotiation strategy as permitted under North Dakota Century Code Section 44-04-19.1 and 15.1-16-22.
Okay,
Second.
okay. Motion by Melissa, second by Nikki. Do we need a roll call?
We will. I think
Okay.
there's two members that might want
That's
to
right.
declare conflict of interest. Greg.
Yeah, that's why I have my hand up. Yeah, I'd like to declare a conflict of interest on this topic.
I also need to declare a conflict of interest.
Okay, thank you. After we approve this motion, we'll have everybody depart the room, and we will go into a closed executive session. So I'm sorry, Anne Marie, roll call or general?
Roll call.
Roll call vote, please.
Ollenberger.
Yes.
Berkland.
Yes.
Day.
Yes.
Gullickson.
Yes.
Kristen Nelson.
Yes.
Robin Nelson.
Yes, okay, we will go into executive session after the room is prepped. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We'll have you depart the room if you're not in administration or board. Back into our public session. The executive session has commenced. The only other item on our agenda is our next meeting, I believe. Our next regular meeting is June 10th at 5:30 PM. We are adjourned. Thank you.